días, buenas tardes, or buenas noches, depending whatever time you're listening and watching this episode of Las Paleteras. Yes, welcome to episode 2, amigas. We did it. So, the first episode you joined us, le dijimos un poquito quiénes somos, qué nos gusta, cómo nos comemos las paletas. Aprendimos que una la chupa, otra la muerde y yo me la trago. ¿Pa' qué les miento? In addition, we wanted you all to know us a little bit more, not only as the people that we are, but also we wanted to talk about our inner queer little niñejota. We don't talk enough, I think, about who we were as children and just how we're evolving. And for this episode, we wanted to continue the conversation, pero un poquito más, usted sabe. A la paleta que se chupa, a la paleta que se muerde, un poquito más sabrosón, porque dijimos que aquí hay mucho chisme y mucho chaos y mucha sabrosura. Entonces, primero que nada, compañeras, ¿cómo están? How are you doing?
¿Cómo andas?
I'm good.
Yo feliz de estar con ustedes.
Sí, otro episodio más.
Otro episodio.
It's going by fast.
Can we just talk about the fact that we fucking look good? Like, we're matching. Aquí es como una señoras de otoño.
Es que
like,
that's how you know. That's how you know. We don't even try, you know? Like, así salimos así combinaditas.
Porque la que puede, puede.
And then we got those little cute botas.
Las botas, amigas. We should have
¿Quién
a
nos va a
bota
patrocinar?
camp.
Who's going to
For real.
sponsor?
And actually, let's make a little jingle. Go like this.
But this is
I'm
not
shaking
a
my
regular
ass
thing.
instead of my botita. I don't know how to isolate. I'm still working on that.
Yo, qué fuerte.
All right.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that y'all are doing well. Again, this is super dope. I'm having a good time, and I can't believe it's already episode 2. Episode 1 went by so quickly, and they're going to keep coming. So last time, we talked a little bit about who we were, our inner queer child, and the ways in which, that flourished, empezó a nacer. So I'm curious for this episode to start off thinking about the ways, bitch, ¿qué les gusta? Así, ya, entrando a lo bueno. Entrando a lo bueno. ¿Qué les gusta más que nada? And have you seen the ways in which your pleasures have maybe changed over time? Como like, what are some of your pleasures? Like, what have you learned about that are very queer in your own way? Like, what are some of your pleasures? You know, it could be sexual, doesn't have to be sexual. Maybe la ropa te ha cambiado, te ha gustado diferentes cosas. And have you noticed the ways in which basically it has changed? I mean, specifically because we're using for this podcast and how we're talking about ourselves as queer. Right? And to really get to what queer is, I mean, in the first episode, we talked about the binaries and getting rid of the binaries. Yeah. And so in your ways of seeking and finding pleasure, how have you become more queer in the non-binaries sort of way?
Yeah, I mean, I can start if you.
Yeah, dale.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I feel like growing up, like as a gay man, I feel like there's so many like restrictions or like very much like stereotypes of like, te ves de un modo y eres pasiva, activo, like, I feel like you could only pick one or the other. And I feel like over the last couple of years, like, I don't know, I've just been having fun. Like, there's things that I feel like I liked when I was younger. And now I'm like, wait, I like doing that to that person. Or like, I want to explore like relationships with like other queer folks that are a little bit more like open and just like, I don't know, not like myself, but I don't know, I feel like it's changed for me a lot. Like, I feel like, yes, she's a verse bottom. She's versatile. Le gusta de todo.
Otra.
I like because I feel like before it was like, yeah, bottom. Then it came to a point where I was like, wait, I want to like try something else. Then I was like, oh, this is so much easier. But also like, there's certain people that I want to do certain stuff with. And there's other people that I'm like, ay, se me antoja like a different type of sexual relationship with that kind of person. And it makes you like open up like, I feel like all your pleasures where like you're so stuck on one thing. But when you start testing other things and just not being afraid, you like open yourself up a lot.
Not being afraid.
Yeah, you
no
can't be
porque
afraid.
esté mamado el vato, me lo voy a que quiero que me coja. Oiga, no porque esté
You have to be a little
mamado el
puta
vato.
sometimes to
Listen.
fully understand what you like and what you don't like.
And also, but to be clear, Cesar, you only have experiences con hombres? Like, what's your identity? What's your orientation? Because I don't know if did you actually answer that?
But is that part of the queer exploration you're going through? Because that's what you said. You
Yeah,
wanted to
I feel like
more-
Okay.
I mean, I do have a preference. I prefer men. And then I prefer like more like macho masculine men. But I feel like lately I've been like, okay, like I like guys like me or like, you know what I mean, to do different things with.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's open. I have like, me gusta de todo. I have a huge spectrum. But yeah, like 2 years ago I was like, oh, let me like dabble into like something new. But it was like more like in a threesome area where like I don't know. I feel like at bars recently I've been getting hit on a lot by like male and female couples where they're like, hey, you're cute, blah blah. You're like, oh, like the guy's hot and like the girls. I mean, I feel like a lot of gays love pretty girls. Like I feel like I don't know. I'm attracted. I love like beautiful women. I think women's bodies hot. But like for me, sexually, I'm not like sexually attracted to a woman's body. Like I mean, I've seen a lot of women's bodies and I'm just like, okay, cool. Like están bonitos, like they're cute. Like shout out to all my girlfriends. I feel comfortable with me. But like for me, like no me hace nada. Like I'm not like I'm gonna, you know what I mean? But
es que ya en el cachondeo, bebé. Todo sale
I like
sobrando.
dick. But yeah, I had a threesome like a year, girl, on my fucking lunch break. But like a year ago, that's another story.
What was the makeup of the threesome?
It was this guy and this girl, like mixed couple.
Okay, so she was like bi threesome.
Yeah, like she's super open, and I feel like the guy was like also going to his queer identity. Like he's like, I like messing around with guys, but only like making out and like not getting penetrated, or like not penetrating a guy, but like making out with someone and like seeing his fiance with like a guy. And I was like, honestly, like I'm kind of down. Like why not? Like I think I was like 27 at the time, 26, and I was like, I've never done anything with like a female, and they made me feel so comfortable, and we were like drinking and just like so like open that I was like, ya estoy aquí, girl, de una vez, let me
try it.
Let me go
I feel like you have to try everything to see what you like and what you don't like. In that moment, I was like, for sure, like I'm only here because of the guy, and the guy's hot as fuck.
Yeah.
And I'm like making eye contact with the guy, and like the girl was like, icky. So I'm like, oh, she's cute with the guy. Like it's hot watching them.
Okay, but you tried that.
But I went and I tried everything.
I
tried everything. It's not for me, but it's not for me, but I tried it once.
Yeah. How about for you, Nalgona? Like, what do you think about like the question, you know, sexuality really fluid or has it been fluid?
Because you've done the
like,
todo.
How do you feel?
Amigas, por favor,
aprendí muchas cosas de mi amiga. And I'm kidding.
I love how you said it. Es que has hecho de todo.
I look up to you. Kidding.
Our queer elder here.
I look up to you.
Ese traje sí me siento bien tía. Ay, no.
I'm trying to check off all the boxes like you.
No, but I think similar to you, I mean, my repertoire has mostly been cis men.
Repertoire.
Yeah, because I'm not going to say my preference, but my repertoire has mostly been straight men. There is definitely, I think, before this heteronormative, homonormative inclination to try to find more like mask presenting, but that's when I was very young. And then I think leaning into my queerness, it was more like, you know what? I'm down for other femmes. Because I'm like, bitch, fuck it. Like, I know the shit that is, you know, I've had to go through to be here. I can only imagine like what that looks like for you being you, that I'm like, that deserves love. And I'm down for that. And there's such a beautiful practice and cadence that happens in how the way you lean in. Pero, o sea, también me ha pasado de todo. Una vez, for example, I had my first experience. I remember my first experience with a trans man. And at that point, you know, I guess it was my first time with a vagina. I should frame it like that instead. Just cut that out. My first time with the vagina. It doesn't matter who.
The vagina?
It doesn't matter who had the vagina. Así que productor, córtale eso. But my first time with the vagina, I just remember and being like, okay, this is different. And for sure, I think, you know, what's really frustrating is that sometimes society and gay men particularly, we're also products of patriarchy. Y son igual de machistas, pinches hombres jotos.
Dude, los jotos are the worst sometimes.
Y'all gotta do the work. It's like,
look, my
just because we're queer, it's like, that doesn't mean you gotta go do it. Especially when you're the most privileged
too, because you're like thinking of what other
people
people are gonna say, your other queer friends, and it's like, we should just be super open.
To me, the way I always say it is this. Amiga y en casa, usted escuche. Gay white men are the Karens of queer liberation.
100%.
Yes, they are.
100%.
And so that being said, I think, you know, we're socialized or have been socialized to think that vaginas are disgusting. Even if it's not for you, like, don't yuck someone's yum. First, number
Sorry, I just did that and I apologize to all the vaginas.
Number one rule of like reproductive health work that I did was like, don't yuck my yum. Like that was like a community agreement. And so because of that, I was like, okay, fuck it. So the first time I encountered a vagina, I was like, I don't know what to do. I've never done this before. So I did ask for someone to guide me or the person to guide me, and they did. And it was like different. The texture was different. The smell was different. The liquid. I was like, I don't need lube for this.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shit, okay. And then I went down and then did oral. And I finally understood what it means to say, siéntate en mi cara. And I was down for it. It was like a manjar, bitch. It was weird only in the sense that it had been the first time, but I was down. But check this. So I remember this one time on 420, una había fumado. Se sabe. Amiga, se sabe. Una había fumado, estaba en el baño, me estaba dando autoplacer, porque son mejor los orgasmos cuando estás más para allá que para acá. Y I started thinking about that experience. Yeah. Because it had turned me on so much.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm being turned on by vagina. What? Okay. And then I remember I'm thinking this out loud after, everything happened and I was in the shower, me estoy bañando y me estoy rasurando. And I had nails on, like press-on acrylic nails. And rather than thinking like, oh my God, am I a little straight? I was like, no, you're fucking queer as hell. O sea, imagínate.
¿Y cuándo fue eso?
Hace pocos años.
Yeah. But isn't it interesting, like, because we were, especially growing up, we were put in this, like, o eres esto o esto.
Yeah.
Claro.
Right? And so maybe that's where, no sé, like, that's where that thought of, like, am I, like, instead of thinking
I think for me, instead of thinking that, right, the transition and the reframing is like, no, bitch, you're queer as hell.
Yeah.
Like the way I summarize it, sometimes I go to Puerto Rico for work. Shout out to Puerto Rico. I love that island. Amazing work happening there too. But every time I go to Puerto Rico, bitch, I'm like, I'm hella pansexual.
Everyone's beautiful.
Everyone, all the genders, all the sexualities, all the skins, all the melanins is beautiful. That every time I go to Puerto Rico, I've just become a pansexual.
Yeah.
I think I'm a queer in the US and a pansexual in Puerto Rico.
It changes in different countries.
I love that.
Different
y sabes
islands,
qué, me siento un
todo.
poquito más conectada contigo sabiendo que has disfrutado la panocha. I didn't know that, and now I feel a
you
little
gotta
bit.
try everything, right? Culo, panocha.
What do Ana Sheila and Algona have in common? Nos gusta la panocha. Aquí lo dijo. Ay, qué fuerte.
Play it
Pues
back.
hablando de eso, ¿me toca o todavía no me toca?
Sí, dale. Ay, que te toquen.
We know you love panocha.
You're like, but the audience doesn't know that? Or yeah,
Oh, yeah,
no, they do.
just
They do.
kidding. They don't?
No, pero
Mira, ya algunas televidentes se mojaron. Televidentes.
No, as you were describing it, I was looking at her and she's like,
no, es que to be, I gotta be real. Like, I don't think I've never on a podcast, because this is not like how I used to talk on my former podcast, if I'm being real. So I am like really excited about this opportunity. No, pero like to actually, I'm feeling a little like, oh my God, are we really talking about this? But we are.
I'm like, I'm sorry,
and I'm
Emma.
like, they can't be talking about this. Y yo aquí como que, ay, la panocha. You know?
Yo de que así le hice.
he's like, siéntate mi cara.
Se sabe de mujer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like ha cambiado, like I think it's like as you're discovering yourself, that changes, right? And I thought when I was younger, primero pensaba que era bisexual, right? So I thought I liked men and women. And then once I started experiencing women or femme bodies, I was like, oh, like, es como que, it's like when you eat something que sabe como que te gusta, que it's fine, you can eat it, but it feels like a little bland, but it's fine. And then... Pero,
y la otra sacando su seasoning. A ver, espérate, bebé.
y ya cuando le pones como ese ingrediente especial and it becomes like explosive.
¿Y cuál es ese ingrediente
What is this explosive, girl?
Pues ya sabes.
Tell us, please.
Una panocha. Like,
Oh, okay.
that's what I mean. Like, I felt like once I started experiencing that, I was like, oh my God, this is the fullness of my like orientation, my sexuality. Of pleasure.
Right.
Yeah. And then I think and then también ahí, like, I feel like, I don't know how y'all felt, like, you were talking about this a little bit, Cesar. It's like, what are you into, right? It's like, do you like more like femme, masc? And I think before, I felt like I was trying to sort of still fit within like, como in the, like, sort of in the binary, like, oh, somebody that looks really feminine is what I want to like, because that's still like a woman.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's where I went. And then I was trying to feel like, oh, well, if I like that, like then I have to dress really mask because I still regresando a esa misma idea del binary, ¿verdad? Like
Yeah, the
like
homonormative.
stud and femme. That's what goes. So if I like someone that looks more femme, then I have to dress like a stud. And so like the kind of the journey of then, pero that doesn't really feel like me. But I also, before I was performing womanhood, so I was being extra femme. And so it was like a journey of like coming to what do I really feel like? And what I realized, it's like something in between and like a quien le voy a gustar, le voy a gustar.
Sí.
You know what I mean?
You said something really crucial, right, about leaning into into the pleasure.
Yeah.
Right? I think also heterosexuality teaches us that there is this need to overpower, to appropriate your partner's body, right? And so I think it's really interesting to think about when you lean into the pleasure of it all, you also discover that there's multiple levels to intimacy, right? Like, a él solo le quiero agarrar la mano, a él le mamo la, ya sabes, la paleta, a él que me dé su paleta, a ella que se siente en mi cara. And I think even in the example that you made, like, I'm gonna watch. O sea, it's the leaning into the pleasure and advocating for it, one, and also not feeling ashamed of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I love
A
that.
ver, quiero hacer una dinámica. Vamos a sacar unos paletitos, si se puede.
Tengo miedo.
Ay, hola. Tampoco. Vamos a sacar unos paletitos, unos popsicle sticks con unas preguntitas aquí. A ver qué piensan. ¿Quién empieza?
Let's go.
But you gotta read it aloud too, so
ver.
people hear.
For the audience.
La pregunta es, what's the most recent moment you felt yourself tone down your queerness? And that's going to be for Cesar.
But I feel like this is, okay. I do have a recent experience because I was in Mexico like a month ago visiting mis abuelitos. And a lot of my cousins were with me and my little cousins were like, oh, like, Cesar tiene novia, or like, ¿dónde está tu novia? ¿Por qué no tienes novia? And I was just like it's like that question that you're like, from a kid, like, tus tías, ¿y tu novia? ¿Y la novia? ¿Y la novia? And it's like, girl, like, calm down. But in that moment, I looked at my sister and I was like, I looked at my sister and my cousin and I was like, do I say like, y mi novio? Or like, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I'm like, do I want to take this time to like, open that conversation, just like let it go? And I just let it go.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're so used to just like letting that question go. And I'm like, ay, no, ahorita no quiero, no tengo tiempo, or like, salí bien caras. But I feel like I want to get to that point, but I'm like still like slowly opening those conversations with my family in Mexico, and it like takes time.
Pero sabes que I feel like you get to have first of all, have compassion for yourself, because I feel like maybe yes, like we want to feel like we can open up all the time, but también is we have to be mindful of our like, do you have the emotional capacity in that moment to like give energy to that? And there's also like a fair thing for you to be like, you know what, that's not where I want to put my energy right now, and it's not about you needing to like, you know, que no hiciste esto, but it's like, you know what, in that moment, like that wasn't worth your energy.
Yeah.
Y no quiere decir, you know, like,
That's
que
true.
no, yeah.
Yeah,
No
I think
sé
we put our energy where we need to. Sometimes it's like, no
Yeah,
vale la
like-
pena, or like,
See, like I've gotten
I'm being
sometimes like,
myself.
Especially those little cousins. Y usted, tía, ¿por qué está teniendo
Pinche
hijos tan
mocoso.
vieja?
Yeah.
¿De por qué está teniendo hijos
But also,
tan
it's like a
vieja?
responsibility on people's parents. Like, I feel like I have cousins now that are having kids. And sometimes I'm like, oh, like, do you have a little crush? And my cousins are always like, boy or girl? And I'm like, oh my God, like, I wish my parents or tias would have said that growing up.
Yeah.
So it's like we're slowly changing that narrative too.
Yeah, totally.
But it takes
Pero
time.
it's like, what do you have the energy for? And also, like, are you safe? And that's okay to make a call
that's
based
true.
on your safety. Like, a mí me ha pasado en Ubers que hombres me han, like, preguntado, like, cosas de mi orientation. And I haven't corrected them at times because I'm like, sometimes I have. And what's happened then is that que me hacen un montón de otras preguntas that I don't want to answer. And I'm like, I don't want to engage in this. So I've had that situation where I had to engage and stand up for myself. And I'm like, oh, that was so exhausting. I was like educating this hetero man.
Why are men so gross?
And so other times, like, sometimes it's been fine. Sometimes I've had to do more than I wanted to. And then sometimes it's like, ¿sabes qué? No les voy a corregir porque that's just like, that's not what I want for myself right now. And I don't know, like, who knows? Sometimes you don't know if you're going to be safe in a certain situation. And that sucks, pero it's real, no? Yeah. So, Cesar, do you want to pick one for Nalgona?
Yeah, pues. Yeah. Who's your celebrity crush? Who put this here? ¿Quieres otra?
Who's my celebrity crush?
This is such a hard one because I feel like there's so many people. Or when you were
Do
younger.
you, I mean, I feel like some people,
chiquito.
pero todos no tienen. I feel like I don't that often have a celebrity crush.
No, me neither. Put another one.
Otra.
Universe. Who drinks the most?
What the hell?
Out of us three? Ding, ding, ding.
Yo creo que sí.
Who?
Pregúntale
Me.
otra
Otra.
alguna.
Okay. I think I'm the alcoholic.
Make up a kinky one.
Are you in a relationship?
Oh, am I in a relationship? Perfect. That's a good question. No, I'm not. I am not in a relationship. I think I am very happy being single. And the way, okay, cool. The way I think right now and how I feel about relationships, it's, you know what? I think I had to go through the process of thinking to myself, like, I don't need a relationship, one. But then also now reconciling with the fact that, one, I don't need a relationship. And two, I don't want a relationship. Yeah. Which is the most important part, right? Once you feel in that, you go through that process and that healing of knowing that you don't need one, first of all. And then to get to that place of empowerment to say, I don't want one, is also a lot of fun. I enjoy being, poly solo in the sense of like, I'm into like having multiple partners. They're not all at once. That doesn't look like the same for every one of them. I think I'm just naturally a flirt. Es que soy puta, señoras. Sí.
Somos coquetas.
Coqueta. Hola, that's like your demure. Bitch. Yo no soy coqueta. Yo, mire.
During the day, coqueta. La noche,
de día nalgona y de noche tragona. Ay, Dios. No. Y eso que vamos a salir a rato, amigas. Stay tuned.
No.
Pero no, o sea, no, I feel very happy not being in a relationship. I like that I can flirt with people. I like friendships that are actually a little bit more romantic. I have a lot of friendships that are romantic that I'm like, dude, you like just treated me to a candlelit dinner. Yeah. And that's beautiful and that's romantic. And like, it doesn't need to be more than that other than the fact that you're my really good friend and I love you. You know what I mean? So,
I think that's really beautiful. And I know we were going to get into, relationships probably in another episode, but I think it's really beautiful having intimacy with friends. And that's something I'm exploring. But también I want to commend you, Nalgona, because I feel like being comfortable, being and happy being single is so important. And I feel like what I'm realizing now is like whenever I'm in between relationships, because I think I'm like maybe in more relationships more often than both of you. Pero
oh yeah, single as a Pringle my whole life.
Pero lo que me he dado cuenta es que es importante to after breaking up with somebody, like you have to get to the point where you are completely content being single before you can be in another relationship.
Oh, 100%.
Because if you get into a relationship before you're at peace being by yourself, that means that next relationship is filling a void. And you need to learn how to fill the void by yourself before you're in partnership. 100%. That's like a big lesson that I learned. And that means a veces tienes que sufrir un poquito. Get intimate with your friends.
So we're all single in case anyone's ready to mingle out there. Slide in the DMs.
Follow us and subscribe to all of our socials at Las Paleteras Podcast.
We're fine.
Okay, so I have one last question for you.
Ver.
What is a pleasure that you have recently discovered?
A pleasure. Oh my God. You guys, tengo pena. Mami, por favor, please don't watch this part.
I know. Usually sí tengo mucha pena and I don't know. Me sacaste tu chisme.
I think, well, I'll be specific. I think,
Not the lengua, like, girl. It's like,
Que la hagan así.
I think anal is new for me. And,
oh, baby.
And I'm...
Baby. Amigas, agárrense. Se puso bueno el episodio.
Agarra tu paleta, agarra tu...
Eso es que, like, before, like, that's something that was, like, I was too timid to try, and now it feels like it's opened up a new...
It's opened up.
A new a new world for me. There's a whole nother side to play with. I know that's so natural for y'all, but eso no es para mí.
Todos se cagaron de risa aquí en el estudio. A ver, porque está buena la pregunta. What's a pleasure you recently discovered?
Yeah, I like being versatile. Like, I like
beautiful.
enjoying both.
But is that a new pleasure you discovered, or were you mostly one?
I feel like I was mostly like very bottom sub, like sub bottom. And I feel like I feel like people laugh when I'm like, yeah, I like the top randomly, but
Yeah.
I feel like there's certain pleasures like flipping, like enjoying all that kind of stuff. But for the longest time, I used to love just getting, this is very sexual, but like getting rammed. And I'm like, okay, now I also enjoy doing that. You know what I mean? And I feel like before I was like, no, do it to me. Like I want pleasure. And it's like, oh wait, no, I kind of like to give pleasure too.
So I have a question for
ways.
you. Do you feel like what took you this time to finally explore this? Like, is there anything in sort of like the society, even like the culture, the gay culture that perhaps doesn't, like, has there been this idea that's more como like, oh, you're either one or the other that makes it a little bit less free? Like, is that like a little bit of heteronormative?
Homonormative.
Yeah. Homonormative?
Yeah.
I feel like there is like that in the gay culture. Or
and
like
that
you're
continues
very
to
much
be,
like, yeah, or like because you look a certain way, you're like a certain
right.
You're
like
a certain
role.
certain role.
like even
but
today, you still feel like that is there's a strong presence of that. So it
Yeah.
hasn't
Even all
changed.
you podcasters out there who do that type of content, disgusting. So homonormative. You're the ruining our queerness. But
Yeah, I feel like bodies are so different. Everything's like you could enjoy so much more, and I feel like it took me time to like. I think for me, it took different sexual partners to understand what I like. Because you have to be a host sometimes to really know what you do like and what you don't like. And like partners that are like super open and like let you try new things and are like open to explore. Because without that, if I was with the same person, like the first guy I hooked up with, girl, I don't know. I probably wouldn't have been bottoming at this point.
you know what's been
You would have done
something?
nothing.
You know what it's been for me that I've discovered? I don't know if it's because it's in Spanish. So, you know, like I mentioned before, I'm living in La Ciudad de Mexico. And the interesting thing about being there is that I've given myself the opportunity to sexualize my body in Spanish, which is something I haven't done too often. Not that I haven't had Spanish-speaking partners here, but that's even Spanish-speaking partners are gonna like talk shit to you or talk dirty in English. But living in Mexico, that's all I know. And so I wanted to allow myself to give myself that space. And I've discovered that I like getting slapped.
I didn't think you were gonna go that way.
Así unos putazos,
A little choke.
En
a
la
little...
cara,
Bueno, ay, ¿qué hora?
Ay, ¿quién llegó?
Andan muy calientes.
Ya andan muy calientes aquí. Getting guys paletas to cool down.
Sí. A ver, paletitas.
Muchas gracias. Preséntate.
Hi, yo me llamo Eli. I'm one of the producers.
Al otro productor, al otro paletero de esta producción.
Did you get one for yourself?
Ay.
¿Cómo? I'm bad at opening these, you guys.
You're so
Bye.
good. Thank
Yo
you.
lo abro así.
Al rato te pago.
¡El culo!
Al rato te paga Joel.
Oye,
Con su paleta.
está rica. Esa es la misma.
No, I think that's the limón. Oh, no, that's the limón. The
¿Es
limón
mango?
is good.
What is this? ¿Es
Mango.
Mango or piña,
con,
yeah.
¿Es
Sí.
mango con chile?
Sí.
Wait, I thought you were going to say you like
It's so
having
good.
sex in español. Because for me, it's hotter when someone's like, oh, qué rico, or like shit like that.
No, pues de hecho te tenía
I think it's
preguntas.
sexier.
I'm curious. Si sientes, número uno, obviamente descubriste esto, like you discovered this through this being in Mexico and having these experiences. But number one, I'm wondering si you've learned some new words and what some are. And then two, like si se siente diferente, like amar en español, like how you felt. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know se va a poner fuerte, amigas. Some of the new words, I mean, I think some of the things I've discovered, por ejemplo, que te digan ay, no, quiero que me saques toda la leche, papi. Ay, you're like, what the fuck? Or que me digan, préñame. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, that's
Everything
a very
sounds hotter
word.
in Spanish.
Que digan, préñame. Or whatever. That's interesting.
When
I'm
you're
over
in
here
the
like-
bottom era, in the sub-bottom era, you're like,
No, pero o sea,
Yeah.
I'm like a blouse. I'm a femme top también, baby. Entonces que te digan eso, that was interesting. But the last time, I don't know if there's anything different about loving in Spanish, for example. I think it's just more about the vibra for sure and the way you connect and the little dates. I think I'm still loving the same way. I'm just finding out the experience in Spanish, which I just didn't have before. Pero la última vez que the slapping part, I think it comes from the part like that, pues me regañaban, you know, being a kid. And like también pues me pegaban. So I feel like I'm like reframing my traumas into pleasures. You know what I mean? Like that's what
I
it
love
is.
that.
But
Y siento que that's part of the queer journey is being able to turn our oppression into liberation.
Pero espérame, una vez me pasó esto. So one of the first times I got discovered that I enjoyed getting slapped, le dije a mi chacalito que me diera, you know, y el vato como de que, ta, y yo de que, pero más duro, puto, como si fueras hombre, aquí el joto soy yo, con huevos, dame. And he was like, what the hell? And I was like, perdón, se me salió el chuki.
Se le fue, tring.
Yeah, se me salió el chuki. I was like, oh my God, sorry. Pues sí, se me salió el chuki. I was like, sorry, I projected too much on you.
Y güey, pues, ¿qué es un chacalito? I don't know that term.
Un chacal. Es que, okay, that's a whole ass episode too. Pero un chacal, básicamente, it's a word used to describe men in Mexico particularly who are like more rugged, who are like working class usually, who are like, think of like a construction worker here.
Okay.
But in Mexico, it's a little bit weird. Like, you don't want someone from Polanco, a fresa, talking about chacal. It's like, maybe that's a little fetishistic and racist.
Yeah.
But like, if you live in the hood like I do, in Mesa, it's like, I mean, that's like, you know, si estuviera más mamada, yo también fuera chacal, bebé. Let's be real. O sea, normalmente they're like, you know, brown folks, darker skinned folks, que están feos, dicen, pero que están mamados. Son los chacales. Ay, sí. Son mis veladoras en México, les mando un besito.
I love that.
Es que mira, no tendré hijos.
Ya te extrañan.
No tendré hijos, pero mantengo varios.
I can't.
All right, y'all. Now we're going to transition to Sabías Que, a segment where we share a fun fact related to the episode of the day. So, Sabías Que, 3% of folks worldwide identify as gay, lesbian, or homosexual, 4% as bisexual, 1% is pansexual, 1% is asexual, 1% is other, and 11% that don't identify. So probably somewhere on the queer spectrum. And something that's also really interesting is the youngest group, Generation C, are much more likely to identify as bisexual. So 9% compared to 4% millennials, 3% Generation X, and 2% boomers. So just opening that up, what do y'all think about that?
Well, clearly the future is queer. I mean, there's more and more folks coming out. But I mean, even then, I think what this survey doesn't take into account for is that straightness is also changing. Like, even like you being in this threesome that you talked about, right? Like, that's hot. You know what I mean? Like, and I definitely have been in situations where, like, I have heard of a lot of straight men who are into femboys.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? And I think there's now also a conversation that is happening where straightness and masculinity is shifting. Yeah. I think for a period though, because I've dated a couple of men who are healing from toxic masculinity and think that it's queer. And
we love our healing journeys.
It's like, yeah, but not at my cost.
Yeah,
True.
You're bad bunnies of the world, you're queer baiters. No, but I love this survey. I think it's true, especially with young people. I mean, I have been organizing for a long time, for about 16, 17 years now. And I remember when I was younger, during the marriage equality movement, that PGPs were radical. PGPs mean preferred gender pronouns. And it was, of course, only something that the queer community used. And it was like, my PGPs are. And we were like the hot shit, right? But now all of a sudden, everybody and their mamas is signing off in their emails and want to know what pronouns are. Click here, you know? So it's like, you see the evolution for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember back in the day when I was very young, we would do a bunch of PGPs, that was a thing, preferred gender pronouns. And I remember just being so young and it was the most radical thing you could do, right? My PGP is whatever. And we were hella young. And now everybody in the mamas is signing off their emails. Corporate America is signing off their emails.
Or the first question they ask you.
Right, what are your pronouns, you know? And it's
you're like, no sé, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, that's an interesting question. It's like, what do you do when you're like, pues es que estoy cuestionando, you know? I'd rather not share.
You just say it. But I'm curious to think about, and this is, you mentioned this a little bit earlier about the question. I want to bring us back to that question from your little cousins of, where's your novia at? Right? Do you feel that the oppression that we receive as queer people has changed from being an adult to being a child to being an adult? Especially when we look at the Sabías Que, right? We were children in a more Gen X boomer era, but now we're millennials and we're adults. And with that survey, what's interesting is that it kept saying is that younger generations are getting more queer. So does that mean that the way that we also experience oppression the same as when we were children? Because technically our bullies are adults now.
And all my bullies are gay. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh my God. I love it. That's true.
I feel like it's definitely changed a lot. I feel like, thankfully now, things are a little bit more open. Or like, I mean, I also have the privilege of being in a big city, like leaving
In
to a big
LA.
city to find
Yeah.
myself and like be surrounded by more queer folk, people that understood me and like, I don't know, I could relate to. But yeah, I feel like
Is there anything you're
10
still
years.
struggling with?
me, I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm still struggling with a lot of things. Like,
Like what?
I
feels
never
hard?
felt like I had to actually officially come out. Like, I didn't do like the whole like, it's like, hey, you know what I mean? I kind of just like, si me preguntan, lo que se ve no se pregunta. And I would just like live my life like that. Like, close friends obviously knew. But yeah, I feel like, and I've told you guys this before, like, I feel like I felt that sometimes the stuff that I wore, I wasn't masculine enough to wear it, or I wasn't femme enough to wear it, or like, this couldn't be me because I'm gay. But I mean, I could just dress up as a vaquero and like make it a little queer and still like feel mask and like powerful in it. But also if I want to like make it more queer, do that. But I think it just depends on like the space that I'm in and how I feel safe in. Cause like if I go to Mexico, I act a certain way, dress a certain way. And I'm not like, where I'm in LA, like me vale. Like I could be out in a fucking tank top, like some crazy outfit. No siento como que scared. I don't know. That's kind of what I struggle with. Like,
Yeah.
That's real.
What about you, Nalgona? What has changed? What are you still struggling?
You know, I think I don't get called out or like faggot as often. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like it's
you
not.
did a lot.
I think
growing up?
so. I mean, growing up in the hood for sure. And so I don't think that's like as blatant as it was before. One, but I will say I think now it's more about the bathroom. So it's funny because I think in Mexico, gender is still very normalized and very binary.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I can never go, I always feel uncomfortable going to the public restroom in Mexico. And some spaces here as well. I think it's just kind of like, I don't know. Like I think I've normally mostly have gone into the men's restroom just because that's what's normally happened.
Yeah.
But like sometimes now I wear like skirts or something or things that are more feminine, and I don't know where to walk into anymore. And there's not like if there's not a gender neutral bathroom or a gender affirming bathroom, then I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's not even because I care about what people think. It's more about the safety of where do I go.
Oh, like what is safe for you?
What is safe for me? And I think those are the moments where I feel my queerness the most. And it's
Yeah.
like I mean, I always say this, I forget a penis until I have an erection. I mean, it's like it's not a defining aspect of who I am as a person. And I still think that sometimes, not so much in LA. And again, I think to what you said, it definitely have the privilege of it being Los Angeles. And at the same time, because I am from here, like this city knows me at my good, my bad, and my best and my worst. So I can't be afraid of who I am because I am Los Angeles. So like I will never be afraid of my city. But there are moments and isolated moments where I have heard things or that mirada that still bring that fear of when I was a kid. Like that's the thing that like reminds me of my body is still disposable and predisposed to violence. And having to and just bear that in mind, I think now when I was younger, I was much more fearing or I was fearful of that feeling. Now I'm more exhausted. Right? Like a bitch is dealing with bladder problems because I didn't go to the bathroom.
And
in
you're
high
like,
school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like now I have to
feel
go
that.
redo my relationship with my whole urinary tract system because I couldn't go to the bathroom when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because that's where oppression happens. And I'm not
Yeah.
concerned about, you know, bully this, bully that. I'm like, bitch, I just try. Tengo que cagar, amiga. Todas cagamos.
Yeah, and that's
Todas.
exhausting. Yeah, I feel that.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. I
It's
just get
good.
off my chest.
No, something else I wanted to sort of you made me think about is just like, how you in Mexico, I mean, we have to deal with this everywhere, but like how you're constantly reminded of your gender because we're constantly, everything has a gender and you're always addressed by your gender, right? So like when I go to Mexico, like every single person, señorita, señorita, señorita. And number one, it's like interesting, and I'm like, oh, todavía me llaman señorita. That's cute. Like they're still calling me señorita. That's really sweet.
A mí me han dicho dama.
Dama, girl.
¿Te han dicho dama? No, pero so it's interesting. It's like
Soy una dama.
No, yeah, but I'm like that's
So I
so
feel like
little dama. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, like
in Mexico, you're constantly reminded of both like your age and your gender.
And your gender,
Right? So right
yeah.
now I'm like, I wonder when they're going to start calling me señorita. And part of me appreciates the señorita because I'm like, okay, I kind of still look whatever, a certain like, whatever ageism. So I'm like, oh, that's nice. But I know that I don't ever want to be called a señora because I don't identify as a señora. Like to me, that just feels so far from like my identity or anything I'm ever gonna like identify with. I'm like, oh, what does señora feel like? And I'm like, oh, that actually feels a little nicer to me. Like that feels a little bit, and that's been interesting to kind of reflect on that. I'm like, señora does it not, and then there's more reflection there. Do I not identify with señora because of like my identity that feels a little bit goes that masc and femme? Or is there also some like misogyny or like something else or like prejudice related to being a señora and how people box you in to being a certain type of person as a señora? Señora is this, as that. And a lot of them are like negative things because of society sometimes.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think there's something that we've done just yet.
Yeah.
What are our gender pronouns? What do we use para que nos conozca la gente un
Sí,
poquito
¿verdad?
más? Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, it's like she I still feel good with because I feel like biologically I connect with she, but spiritually, energetically, I feel like a they. Like I feel like that feels really liberating to me and not to put myself in that box. So energetically, I feel masc and feminine, and so they feels nice as well. So I'm still kind of like jugando, explorando, but right now that's where I'm at. Yeah.
What about you?
mine are he, él, him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The femboy.
The fanboy. esa jota.
Esa jota más.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe that's like something I'm still trying to like discover as well too, to get to like fully comfortable. But for right now, yeah.
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 Very much he, him.
Yeah, I también they, them, ella en español, I think it was for similar reasons. I mean, I'm grateful, I think as we were talking earlier about how queerness has really changed and evolved. I mean, yeah, there were gender neutral pronouns back in the day, like zir and here and here. And I was like, they're not fun though. But I do, I think it's interesting to think about the fact, like for me, just the they, them feels good. And it's not necessarily that it's like an identity I'm trying on now. And I think that's really important for people to understand that like with gender pronouns, I think it's mostly a way for us as people to try to find ourselves, really.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
It's not about you.
I think it's about us trying to find ourselves. Now, I also do realize, and I think this is not a popular opinion, but even though I identify as they, them, I'm not gonna dismiss my mother for calling me he.
Yeah.
Like I know the relationship I have with my mother. And I know that she doesn't know what pronouns might be or they might be confusing, but I'm not going to dismiss her for that reason because one, cancel culture is fucking us up. Perdona, amigas, pero cancel culture is fucking us up, honestamente. Like, don't think we can build a new world without going through compassion and restoration. And if we're canceling people, we're not giving people the grace to do that. It requires work and it's a long time. Pero también, amigas, I'm not going to cancel my mother. And so I think that's been that journey of moving with some grace and understanding that like you've mentioned, right? Like it might be that our pronouns change because we're discovering. I think that's the most beautiful thing about, what we've talked about in this episode and the last episode, that our queerness has been the thing that's changed the most in ourselves, but it's been the only constant thing. You know what I mean? And that's beautiful why we can be something like this, like Las Paleteras. Venimos en todos los sabores, bebés. Pero somos sabrosas y deliciosas.
Y picosas.
Y picosas.
Peligrosas.
Y peligrosas y desmadrosas. Y unas comemos panochas y otros comemos las dos y otras verga. Aquí de todo.
De todo.
Por eso Las Paleteras.
But it's also with like being queer, we're also learning a lot of that stuff as we go. Like
And
I feel
so-
like for me, like in corporate America, I feel like they're like, oh, like, can you explain this and this? And I'm like, I'm still trying to learn like all the stuff too. You know what I mean? Like I'm not Google, but I
Yeah.
feel like we're slowly doing our own homework to like understand the full spectrum of being queer and like our whole queer community,
Yeah.
which also takes time as well. I feel like there is some grace. As
Y,
well.
ajá, y, pues sí, regresando, I mean, it's regresando a eso. Like, if it's something that there's a lot of things we don't know about each
Yeah.
other, right? There's a
And
lot of
we're
things
still
that I don't
struggling
know
with it.
about, like, LGBTQ plus identities that are different than mine, right? Like, and so and that's a great reason to have this grace and compassion for folks, especially older folks, especially our parents, como dices.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a difference between people that are like coming to things with like a little bit more ignorance, and there's a difference between people that are coming at us con odio,
Yeah.
you know, and knowing the difference and what are we actually trying to achieve with how we're engaging with people,
Sí.
¿verdad?
Bueno, amigas, les tengo una mala noticia.
¿Qué pasó?
Hemos llegado al fin del episodio. Pero antes de irnos, I was thinking that we could do a little bit of an exercise. I want us to complete the phrase.
Okay.
My queerness is. Les voy a dar un momentito para que piensen. Pero así algo chiquitito de lo que hemos hablado hoy, lo que hemos vivido.
Yeah.
My queerness is.
I have mine.
Ah,
Oh,
sí. A ver,
mira,
dale.
mira qué rápido. A+,
Ay, 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 I know.
student.
Where do I go?
Yo
This
siempre soy
camera,
like,
that camera.
A la tuya.
My queerness is evolving.
oh.
Yeah, it's always evolving. Like a little Pokemon. Level 2, level 3.
You're stupid.
Yeah.
Le dije yo, hot and stone.
A fire. Like,
Oh my God,
can't with you.
I'm
not
just
a hot
learning.
and stone.
I'm just learning about Pokemon
Rainbow
because
Stone.
my
Stone.
sobrinitas are obsessed. They're
I
obsessed.
love it. We could be like Eevees.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
I love Eevee. Yeah.
Y'all gotta teach me.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, you
but-
You're the fire one. Or the,
Yo quiero,
Flareon.
Ponita,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, we
Ponita.
got Flareon.
Ponita, that's
Electrion.
one, right? Or is
Ponitia?
my niece saying it wrong? No?
Look, I only know
Ponita?
the first 150.
Oh,
I don't know about
she
y'all.
it's a horse con una flame too.
Oh, yeah.
Is it Bonita? I don't
yeah,
know.
the little
Yeah,
something. It looks like a little
Ponita.
fox, no?
Sí, sí,
Yeah,
sí,
yeah.
sí,
No, that's
Bonita,
all
no?
pigs.
I mean, that's
Oh,
what my
okay.
niece said. She's 4, so she could be saying
Yeah,
it
no,
wrong.
you're
pero-
right.
Shout out to Togepi. I loved her.
A ver, dale, dale.
A ver, dale. I feel like I've said this already, pero my queerness is my path toward liberation. And that's what I get to keep reminding myself over and over and over again, because if I've done that work. That was the hardest thing I had done. Todo lo demás, like, not only is like, just use the same como framework that allowed me to liberate myself in that way and apply it to all these other aspects of my life. So whether it's thinking about starting a family or thinking about what I actually want to do with my life, like, ¿por qué me voy a meter? Why am I going to put myself back in a box when I've already gotten out of a box? So just remembering that the muscle memory of like being queer was liberatory. So keep coming back to that. I don't need to keep putting myself in boxes that I already got out of. And sometimes I feel like it's easy to kind of start to feel the pressure, societal pressure, heteronormative pressure applied even to us, even though we've done this work. And so sometimes I got to remind myself, girl, you've already done this. Why are you all of a sudden trying to put yourself back into a box that you already got out of? So that's what I have to keep reminding myself over and over again, what a beautiful gift it is to be queer and to use that as a framework for my freedom in all aspects of my life.
I love that.
Yeah.
Bueno, yo les voy a dejar con una línea de un poema que dice así. When I meet my creator, I will ask them to make me queer, queer, and queer again in all lifetimes. I love unapologetically in the name of the ancestors who had to love in secret. Bueno, amigas, hemos llegado al final de este episodio. Remember to follow us and subscribe on all of our socials at Las Paleteras Podcast. And if you are discovering yourself, if you are evolving, si les gusta un poquito de esto, un poquito del otro, no se preocupen porque recuerden que la vida es más sabrosa con nosotras. Porque somos
Las Paleteras.
Las Paleteras.
Hi, Paletitas. This podcast is produced by Joel and Elpidio Perez, along with your hosts. Las Paleteras is edited by Augusto Martinez, with music by Cintia Morado and Ingrid Guijarro. Special thanks to our friends at Mitu and Sonoro for production support.